The rain started just after midnight and didn't let up. By the time Sarah Mitchell's alarm went off at 4:30 in the morning, water was drumming against the trailer's thin metal roof like 1,000 impatient fingers. She lay in the dark for a moment, listening to the sound, feeling the familiar weight of exhaustion settle over her before the day had even begun. The trailer was small and old, parked in the Shady Pines Mobile Home Park on the eastern edge of Branson, Missouri. Sarah shared it with her daughter Emma, who was 7 and asleep in the tiny bedroom at the back. The heat had gone out 3 days ago, and Sarah had been running a space heater on an extension cord, rationing the electricity because she couldn't afford another high bill. Not this month. Not with Emma's asthma medication due for a refill and the car registration 2 months overdue. Sarah got up quietly and dressed in the dark, black pants, white shirt, non-slip shoes that were wearing through at the heel. She pulled her dark hair into a ponytail and checked herself in the bathroom mirror. 32 years old, but looking older, the lines around her eyes deepening from too many double shifts and not enough sleep. She splashed cold water on her face and tried to summon the energy for another day. The Sunrise Diner sat on Route 65, a chrome-sided building from the 1950s that had been maintained just well enough to stay in business. Sarah had worked there for 3 years, pulling the early shift 6 days a week, 4:30 to 2:30, sometimes longer if they were short-staffed, which they usually were. The pay was minimum wage plus tips, and the tips were never enough. But it was steady work, and her boss, Jerry, let her bring Emma in after school to do homework in the back booth until closing time. That alone made it worth keeping. She drove through the rain in her ancient Honda, the wipers squeaking across the windshield, the check engine light glowing like an accusation. The car had been making a grinding noise when she turned left, and she'd been pretending not to notice because there was no money to fix it. There was never money to fix anything. Sarah had gotten good at pretending not to notice a lot of things. The diner was empty when she arrived, just Jerry in the kitchen prepping for breakfast, and Brenda, the other morning waitress, smoking a cigarette under the overhang out back. Sarah clocked in, tied on her apron, and started the coffee. The ritual of it was soothing. Filters, grounds, hot water. The smell always reminded her of her grandmother, who'd raised her after her parents died, and who'd been gone now for 5 years. Her grandmother had always said that coffee was the small grace that got you through the hard mornings. Sarah thought about that every day as she brewed the first pot. The early customers trickled in around 5. Truckers, factory workers, a few regulars who Sarah knew by name and order. She moved through the routine with practiced efficiency, pouring coffee, taking orders, delivering plates, refilling cups, smile, make eye contact, remember who likes extra cream and who takes it black. The tips went into her apron pocket, and she counted them mentally as the morning progressed. $37 by 8 o'clock. Not bad. Not good either, but not bad. Around 8:30, the door opened and a man walked in. Sarah noticed him immediately because he didn't fit the usual pattern. He was in his 50s, tall and thin, wearing a worn leather jacket with patches she couldn't quite make out. His face was weathered and tired, and he moved slowly, like someone carrying pain they'd learned to manage. He took a seat at the counter, and Sarah grabbed a coffee pot and a menu. "Morning," she said, setting down the menu and turning over his cup. "Coffee to start. Please." His voice was rough but polite. He wrapped both hands around the cup when she poured, like he was trying to absorb the warmth. His hands were shaking slightly. Sarah gave him a moment with the menu, then came back. "What can I get you?" He looked at the menu, then at her, and something in his expression made her chest tighten. It was the look of someone doing math in their head, counting change, making calculations about what they could afford versus what they needed. She'd seen that look in the mirror often enough to recognize it. "Just the coffee," he said. "That's all." "You sure?" "We've got a breakfast special. 2 eggs, bacon, toast, and hash browns for $6.95. "Just the coffee's fine." Sarah nodded and moved away, but she kept watching him from the corner of her eye as she worked. He sat hunched over the cup, drinking slowly, making it last. After about 20 minutes, he signaled for the check. Sarah brought it over. 1 coffee, $1.50. The man pulled out his wallet and opened it. Sarah saw him counting what was inside, ones and quarters, maybe $3 total. He set $2 on the counter, leaving a 50-cent tip that was probably more than he could spare, and stood up. "Thank you, ma'am," he said. "Good coffee." Sarah looked at him, at the patches on his jacket that she could now see clearly. Army Ranger tab, Iraq campaign ribbon, a name tape that read, Morrison. She looked at his face, at the exhaustion and the pain and the quiet dignity of someone who'd given everything and ended up with almost nothing. And she made a decision. "Wait," she said. The man turned. Sarah picked up the $2 and held them out. "On the house today." He frowned. "I can pay." "I know you can, but you don't have to. Not today." She kept her voice gentle but firm. "Please, let me do this." The man stared at her for a long moment, and she saw his jaw working, emotion flickering across his face. Finally, he took the money back, his hand trembling as he folded it into his wallet. "That's kind of you," he said, his voice thick. "Real kind." "Thank you." "You're welcome." Sarah smiled, hoping it reached her eyes. "You take care of yourself." He nodded and walked out into the rain. Sarah watched through the window as he climbed onto a motorcycle parked near the edge of the lot, an old Harley that had seen better days. He sat there for a moment before starting it up, and then he rode away, the bike's engine sounding rough even over the rain. Brenda appeared at Sarah's elbow. "You just comped that guy's coffee?" "Yeah. Jerry's going to be pissed if he finds out." "Then don't tell him." Sarah picked up the man's cup and saucer and carried them back to the kitchen. She rang up the coffee from her own pocket. $1.50 that she couldn't really afford but couldn't not give. It was the right thing to do, even if it was stupid. Maybe especially because it was stupid. The rest of her shift passed in a blur of orders and refills and cleared tables. By 2:30, Sarah's feet were aching and her back was sore, but she'd made $63 in tips. She added her own $1.50 for the coffee and counted out what was left, $61.50. It would go toward Emma's medication. It always went toward something essential, something they couldn't do without. There was never anything left over for the things that would make life easier, or softer, or less hard. Sarah clocked out and drove through the still falling rain to pick up Emma from school. Her daughter was waiting under the awning, a small figure in a pink raincoat, her backpack almost as big as she was. Emma's face lit up when she saw the car, and that smile, that pure, uncomplicated joy, made everything worthwhile. "Hi, Mama." Emma climbed into the back seat where Sarah had installed the booster seat she'd found at a yard sale. "We learned about the water cycle today. Did you know that rain is just water that evaporated and then condensed and then precipitated?" "I did know that," Sarah said, smiling at her daughter in the rearview mirror. "Sounds like you paid attention." "I always pay attention." Emma launched into a detailed explanation of the water cycle, complete with hand gestures, as Sarah drove them home. The trailer was cold when they arrived, and Sarah turned on the space heater while Emma changed out of her school clothes. They made dinner together. Spaghetti with sauce from a jar, garlic bread from the day-old bakery rack. It wasn't much, but it was warm and filling, and they ate together at the tiny table, Emma chattering about school and her best friend Lily, and the book they were reading in class. After dinner, Sarah helped Emma with her homework, then ran a shallow bath for her daughter, heating water on the stove to mix with the lukewarm tap water. She washed Emma's hair and wrapped her in towels and got her into pajamas, then tucked her into bed with her stuffed rabbit and the nightlight that made stars on the ceiling. "Mama?" Emma said as Sarah was turning to leave. "Yeah, baby? Are we going to be okay?" Sarah's heart clenched. She came back and sat on the edge of the bed, smoothing Emma's hair back from her forehead. "Of course we are." "Why do you ask?" "I heard you on the phone yesterday, talking about money." Sarah chose her words carefully. "Money's tight right now, but it's always been tight. We always figure it out, don't we?" "Yeah." Emma didn't sound convinced, but she was 7 and still young enough to take her mother's word as truth. "I love you, Mama." "I love you too, baby. More than anything." Sarah kissed her forehead and stood up. "Get some sleep." She left the door cracked and went to the living room, where she sat on the couch and finally let herself feel the weight of the day. She was so tired of working so hard for so little, tired of the constant calculations, the endless juggling of bills and necessities, tired of never being able to give Emma the things other kids had, new clothes instead of thrift store finds, birthday parties at fun places, a warm house with heat that worked. Sarah thought about the man in the diner, about the $150 she'd given him. It had been foolish. She needed that money. But she'd looked at him and seen herself, seen the math and the fear and the quiet desperation, and she couldn't not help. Maybe that made her stupid. Maybe it made her human. Maybe it made her her grandmother's granddaughter, because the old woman had always given, even when she had nothing to give. Sarah pulled out her phone and looked at her bank balance. $87 until Friday's paycheck. Emma's medication was $60. That left $27 for gas and food for 4 days. She could do it. She'd done it before. She'd water down the milk, make soup, stretch for 3 meals, drive only when absolutely necessary. She set her alarm for 4:30 and lay down on the couch, too tired to bother with the pull-out bed. Outside, the rain continued to fall, and somewhere in the darkness, the man on the motorcycle was riding through it, maybe thinking about the waitress who'd given him coffee, maybe not. Sarah closed her eyes and tried not to think about tomorrow, or the day after, or the mountain of tomorrows stretching out ahead. She just needed to make it through. One day at a time. That was all she could do. The next morning started the same as every other. Alarm at 4:30, cold trailer, quiet drive through the dark. The rain had finally stopped, but the sky was still heavy with clouds, and the air was cold enough that Sarah could see her breath. She got to the diner, clocked in, started the coffee. Jerry was in a mood, grumbling about suppliers and food costs, and Brenda was nursing a hangover. Just another Thursday. The breakfast rush came and went. Sarah poured coffee, took orders, delivered plates, smiled until her face hurt. By 9 o'clock, she'd made maybe $20 in tips, which was slow even for a Thursday. She was refilling the sugar caddies when she heard it, the sound of motorcycles, many of them, growing louder as they approached. Sarah looked up as they pulled into the parking lot. 1 bike, then 3, then a dozen, then more. They kept coming, filling the lot and spilling out onto the shoulder of the highway. Big bikes, choppers and cruisers, ridden by men and women in leather jackets, all of them wearing patches that read Road Warriors MC across their backs. Brenda appeared next to Sarah, staring out the window. What the hell? I don't know, Sarah said, her heart starting to pound. She'd heard stories about motorcycle clubs, about turf wars and violence, about places getting trashed when bikers decided they owned it. She gripped the coffee pot tighter, trying to figure out if they should lock the doors or call the police or just wait to see what happened. The bikers dismounted and started walking toward the diner. There must have been 50 of them, maybe more. The first one through the door was a big man with a gray beard and a patch that said President beneath the club insignia. He looked around the diner at the dozen or so customers sitting at tables and booths. Then his eyes landed on Sarah. "You Sarah Mitchell?" he asked. Sarah's mouth went dry. "Yes." "Good." The man smiled, and it was warm and genuine. "I'm Ray Cooper, president of the Road Warriors. We'd like to talk to you if you've got a minute." Jerry had emerged from the kitchen, his face pale. "Look, we don't want any trouble." "No trouble," Ray said easily. "Just a conversation. That all right with you, Sarah?" Sarah nodded, not trusting her voice. Ray gestured to a booth, and she slid in across from him. The other bikers had filed in and were taking seats at tables and along the counter, quiet and respectful, not at all like the chaos Sarah had been expecting. Ray folded his hands on the table. "Yesterday morning, around 8:30, you served a man named Thomas Morrison. Tall guy, Army Ranger jacket. You remember him?" "Yes," Sarah said. "I remember. Tom's one of ours. Rides with the club, good man. Did 3 tours in Iraq. He's been having a rough time lately. PTSD, injuries, can't work steady. We help him when we can, but he's proud, doesn't like to ask." Ray's voice was matter of fact, no judgment in it. "He came in yesterday morning with about $3 to his name. Ordered coffee, was going to pay for it and leave, but you didn't let him pay." "It was just coffee," Sarah said. "It wasn't just coffee. Tom came to our clubhouse yesterday and told us what you did. Said you paid for it yourself, out of your own pocket. Is that true?" Sarah hesitated, then nodded. "Yes." "Why?" "Because," Sarah struggled to find words, "because he looked like he needed someone to be kind to him. And I could afford $1.50 more than he could." Ray studied her for a long moment. Then he smiled again, and this time there was something sad and proud in it. "Tom did some asking around about you after he left. Talked to a few people, found out some things. You've been working here 3 years. Single mom, 7-year-old daughter, living in a trailer with no heat. You work 6 days a week, pull double shifts when you can, and you still can't get ahead. That sound about right? Sarah's face flushed. I don't see how that's anybody's business. It's not. Except you made it our business when you helped one of ours. Ray reached into his jacket and pulled out an envelope. He set it on the table between them. This is from the Road Warriors. Every member of the club contributed. It's our way of saying thank you. Sarah stared at the envelope. I can't accept that. Yes, you can. I didn't help your friend because I wanted something back. I helped him because it was the right thing to do. We know that, Ray said gently. That's exactly why we're here. You gave when you had nothing to give. That's the kind of thing that matters, Sarah. That's the kind of thing we pay attention to. Sarah's hands were shaking. She didn't reach for the envelope. How much is in there? Enough to fix your heat, fix your car, buy your daughter's medication, and put some aside for emergencies. Enough to let you breathe a little easier. Tears started to burn in Sarah's eyes. That's too much. It's not enough, Ray said, but it's what we could pull together on short notice. There's also this. He slid another piece of paper across the table. My brother-in-law runs an HVAC company. He'll come out today, look at your trailer, fix whatever needs fixing. No charge. And Maria... He gestured to a woman sitting at the counter who raised her hand in a small wave. She manages an apartment complex across town. She's got a 2-bedroom opening up next week. First month free. Security deposit waived. It's not fancy, but it's got heat and hot water, and it's in a good school district. Sarah couldn't breathe. The tears were coming now, hot and fast, and she couldn't stop them. Why are you doing this? Because you did something kind for someone who needed it, Ray said simply. And because we take care of people who take care of our own. That's the code we live by. One of the other bikers spoke up from a nearby table. My kid's in Emma's class at school. Teacher says she's real bright, always helping other kids, always kind. Apple doesn't fall far from the tree. Another voice. I own the garage on 5th Street. Bring your car in tomorrow. I'll fix whatever's wrong with it. No charge. Another. My wife works at the food bank. We'll get you set up with a regular delivery. Make sure you've got what you need. The voices kept coming, one after another, each person offering something. Clothes for Emma, tutoring help, a better paying job at a local restaurant, connections to assistance programs Sarah hadn't known existed. The entire diner had become a chorus of strangers who'd decided to help because one of them had been helped by her. Sarah put her face in her hands and wept. Not quiet, dignified tears, but great shaking sobs that came from a place of exhaustion and relief and overwhelming gratitude. She felt Ray's hand on her shoulder, steady and paternal, and heard him say quietly, It's all right. Let it out. When she could finally speak, Sarah looked up at him through her tears. I don't know what to say. You don't have to say anything. Just accept the help. And when you're on your feet, when you're stable, you pass it forward. Help someone else who needs it. That's all we ask. Sarah picked up the envelope with trembling hands. She didn't open it, just held it against her chest. Thank you, she whispered. Thank you so much. Ray stood up, and the rest of the bikers followed suit. We're going to order some breakfast now, if that's all right. Got a lot of hungry people here, and we hear your food's pretty good. Jerry, who'd been standing frozen near the kitchen, suddenly came to life. Yes. Yes, of course. Sit anywhere. We'll get you taken care of. The next 2 hours were controlled chaos. Sarah and Brenda moved through the packed diner, taking orders and delivering plates to the 50-plus bikers who'd filled every available seat. But it wasn't like serving regular customers. These people were patient and kind, tipped generously, thanked her for every coffee refill. They asked about Emma, about her life, treated her like she mattered, like she was someone worth knowing. When they finally began to leave, each one stopped to shake Sarah's hand or hug her or simply nod with respect. Tom Morrison was one of the last to leave. He approached her slowly, his eyes red-rimmed. I'm sorry, he said. I didn't mean to make a fuss. I just told them what you did, and they... Don't apologize, Sarah said, cutting him off. Please don't apologize. What you did, what they did, you gave me hope. You gave me a chance. That's everything. Tom smiled, and it transformed his tired face. You gave me hope first. You saw me. People don't see me much anymore, but you did. They hugged, brief and fierce, two people who understood what it meant to be invisible. Then Tom walked out to his motorcycle, climbed on, and rode away with the rest of the club, a long convoy of bikes disappearing down Route 65, their engines fading to a distant rumble. Sarah stood in the parking lot long after they'd gone, the envelope still clutched in her hand. Brenda came out and stood beside her. You gonna open that? Brenda asked. Sarah opened the envelope. Inside were $50 bills, neatly stacked. She counted them once, then again because she couldn't believe it. $4,000. Oh my God, Brenda breathed. Sarah just stood there, staring at the money, at this tangible proof that kindness existed, that people cared, that giving when you had nothing could come back to you 100-fold. She thought about her grandmother, about the coffee that got you through hard mornings, about Grace. I need to pick up Emma, Sarah said finally. Can you cover the rest of my shift? Go, Brenda said. Get your daughter. Go be with her. Sarah drove to the school in a daze. She arrived early and waited in the car, watching the rain clouds finally break apart to reveal pale November sunshine. When Emma came out, Sarah got out of the car and scooped her daughter up, holding her tight. Mama, what's wrong? Emma asked, alarmed. Nothing's wrong, baby. Everything's right. Everything's finally right. Sarah set her down and crouched to her level. How would you like to move to a new apartment? One with heat that works and your own bedroom. Emma's eyes went wide. Really? Really? And how would you like to go to the store right now and buy some new clothes and maybe some toys? Are you serious? I'm serious. Emma threw her arms around Sarah's neck. Is it because you won the lottery? Sarah laughed, and it felt good, felt light in a way she hadn't felt in years. Something like that, something better than that. They went to the store and Sarah let Emma pick out new clothes. Jeans that fit, shirts with sparkles, a warm winter coat that wasn't from the clearance rack. They bought groceries without calculating every penny, bought the good bread and fresh fruit and Emma's favorite cereal. They bought a small TV for the new apartment and some books and art supplies and a stuffed animal that Emma had been admiring for months in the toy aisle. That evening, they went back to the trailer for the last time. Ray's brother-in-law had already been there, had looked at the heating system and shaken his head. This thing's 20 years past dead, he'd said, but don't worry about it. You're moving anyway, right? And I'll make sure whoever moves in here next gets something that works. Sarah packed their belongings, which weren't many, into boxes and bags. She and Emma carried them out to the car as the sun set, turning the sky orange and pink. The new apartment wouldn't be ready until next week, but Ray had arranged for them to stay at a clean motel until then, paid for in advance. As Sarah locked the trailer door for the last time, she thought about the journey that had brought her here. Growing up poor, losing her parents young, raising Emma alone, working herself to exhaustion day after day. She thought about all the times she'd wanted to give up, had felt the weight of impossibility pressing down on her. And she thought about yesterday morning, about seeing a man who needed coffee and choosing to give it to him even though it cost her. That single $1.50 had changed everything, not because of the money in the envelope, though that helped, not because of the apartment or the fixed car or the food bank deliveries, but because she'd been reminded that she wasn't alone, that there were people in the world who noticed kindness, who valued it, who would move mountains to protect and preserve it. Sarah got in the car where Emma was already buckled in, humming to herself happily. You ready? Sarah asked. Ready, Emma said. They drove away from the Shady Pines mobile home park as the stars began to appear. Sarah didn't look back. She was too busy looking forward, thinking about the apartment with heat, the car that would run properly, the breathing room that $4,000 would buy. She was thinking about how she'd use some of that money to help someone else, because Ray was right. The gift needed to be passed forward. But mostly, she was thinking about her grandmother, who'd taught her that small graces matter, that coffee and kindness can save a person's life. She was thinking about Tom Morrison, and the moment their eyes had met, two people at the end of their ropes who'd chosen to reach for each other anyway. She was thinking about Ray and Maria and all the other road warriors who'd shown her that brotherhood, real brotherhood, wasn't about blood or proximity, but about seeing someone's humanity and choosing to honor it. The next morning, Sarah woke up in the motel room with Emma snuggled beside her, both of them warm and safe and fed. She got up and made coffee in the little pot on the dresser, and she stood by the window watching the sunrise paint the sky gold and pink. She thought about the diner, about the shift that would start in an hour, about going back to work, but going back changed. Better, stronger, more hopeful. Her phone buzzed with a text from Ray. HVAC guy says your old trailer's heating fixed for next tenant. Your car's at the garage being worked on, should be ready tomorrow. Maria says the apartment's available Saturday instead of next week, if you want to move in early. Let me know what you need. Sarah typed back, "Thank you for everything. I'll never forget this." Ray's response came quickly. "You already paid us back. You just didn't know it yet." Sarah smiled and set down her phone. Emma stirred and opened her eyes. "Morning, Mama." "Morning, baby." "How'd you sleep?" "Good. I had a dream we lived in a castle." "Well, we're not getting a castle, but we are getting an apartment with your own room." Emma sat up, suddenly fully awake. "When?" "Saturday. 3 more days." "That's so soon." Emma bounced on the bed, her joy uncomplicated and pure. "Can Lily come visit?" "Of course she can." Sarah sat down next to her daughter and pulled her close. They stayed like that for a while, watching the morning light strengthen through the window, feeling the warmth of the heater and each other. Outside, the world was waking up. Traffic building, businesses opening, people starting their days. Somewhere out there, Tom Morrison was probably waking up too, in whatever place he called home. And Ray and the rest of the road warriors were beginning their days, carrying with them the knowledge that they'd done something good, something that mattered. Sarah thought about the network of kindness that connected all of them now. She'd given Tom coffee, and he'd told his club, and they'd mobilized to help her, and now she'd help someone else. And on, rippling outward like waves in a pond. Each small act creating larger effects, each kindness multiplying. She got Emma ready and dropped her at school, then drove to the diner. Jerry was there when she arrived, and his expression was complicated. "Those bikers yesterday," he said. "They left me a note." He held out a piece of paper. "Said you're the best waitress they've ever met. Said I'd better take good care of you or they'd know about it." He paused. "They also left a $500 tip. Said to split it between you and Brenda." Sarah took the note. In neat handwriting it read, "Take care of Sarah. She's special. The world needs more people like her. Road Warriors MC." "I'm giving you a raise," Jerry said abruptly. $2 an hour, and you get first pick of shifts from now on. And if you ever need time off for your kid, you take it. No questions." Sarah stared at him. Jerry wasn't a bad boss, but he'd never been particularly generous. This was new. "Those bikers scared me," Jerry admitted. "But then I watched them for 2 hours, saw how they treated you. Made me realize I should have been treating you better all along. So that's what I'm going to do." "Thank you, Jerry." "Don't thank me. Thank them. They reminded me that good people deserve good treatment." He cleared his throat, uncomfortable with sentiment. "Anyway, get to work. We've got customers coming." Sarah tied on her apron and got to work. The day unfolded with its usual rhythm, but everything felt different, lighter. The same tasks, the same routine, but Sarah moved through it with energy she hadn't had in years. She smiled at customers and meant it. She chatted with regulars and felt present in the conversations. She poured coffee and thought about her grandmother and Grace and the small things that carry us through. Around 10 o'clock, a woman came in alone and sat at the counter. She was maybe 40, dressed in business clothes that had seen better days, and she ordered just coffee. Sarah watched her count change from her purse, saw the worry in her eyes, recognized the signs. When the woman asked for the check, Sarah brought it over. $150 for the coffee. The woman laid out exact change, no tip, and stood to leave. "Wait," Sarah said. She picked up the money and held it out. "On the house today." The woman stared at her. "I can pay." "I know you can. But you don't have to, not today." Sarah smiled. "Someone did something kind for me recently. I'm just passing it forward." The woman's eyes filled with tears. She took back the money, folding it carefully into her purse. "Thank you," she whispered. "You don't know how much this means." "I think I do," Sarah said gently. The woman left, and Sarah watched her go. watched her get into an old car with a cracked windshield and drive away. And Sarah knew, with the certainty of someone who'd lived through it, that this small act might ripple out into something larger, that maybe that woman would tell someone or help someone or simply hold on to the memory as proof that kindness existed in the world. Brenda came over and shook her head. "You just gave away another coffee." "Yeah," Sarah said. "I did. Jerry's not going to like it. Jerry gave me a raise. I think he'll survive." Sarah grinned. "Besides, it's just coffee." "It's never just coffee," Brenda said, but she was smiling. The rest of the day passed peacefully. Sarah's tips were good, her feet didn't hurt as badly as usual, and when 2:30 came and her shift ended, she felt tired but satisfied. She picked up Emma from school and they went to see the new apartment. Maria met them there, keys in hand. "Welcome home," Maria said, opening the door. It was small but clean. A living room with carpet that wasn't stained, a kitchen with appliances that worked, 2 bedrooms with actual closets, and a bathroom with a shower that had good water pressure. Emma ran from room to room, squealing with delight. Sarah stood in the living room and turned in a slow circle, taking it in. "Heat's included," Maria said. "And the water. You just pay electric. There's a playground out back, and the school's 3 blocks that way. Laundry room's in the basement, and there's a community room if you ever want to host a birthday party or something." "It's perfect," Sarah said, and meant it. "Thank you. Ray said you're good people. That's enough for me." Maria handed over the keys. "You need anything, I'm in Unit 101. And Sarah, don't be a stranger. We look out for each other here." Over the next few days, Sarah and Emma moved into the apartment. The road warriors showed up to help, a dozen bikers carrying boxes up the stairs, assembling the second-hand furniture Sarah had bought, making sure everything was set up right. They brought housewarming gifts, dishes, towels, a small TV for Emma's room, groceries to stock the kitchen. Ray's wife brought over a home-cooked meal in a casserole dish, along with the recipe so Sarah could make it herself. On Saturday night, after everything was unpacked and Emma was asleep in her own room for the first time, Sarah sat on the couch in the living room and looked around. The space was warm. The refrigerator hummed. The heater worked perfectly. Through the window, she could see the parking lot, and beyond it, the lights of town. She'd come so far from that cold trailer, from the desperation and exhaustion that had defined her life for so long. She thought about the moment in the diner when she'd decided to pay for Tom's coffee. Such a small decision, so seemingly insignificant. $1.50. But that decision had set in motion a chain of events that had changed her life completely. It had reminded her that kindness mattered, that small acts had large consequences, that giving when you had nothing was the most powerful giving of all. Sarah pulled out her phone and took a picture of the living room, then sent it to Ray with the caption, "Home." "Thank you." His response came quickly. "That's what family does. Welcome to ours." Family. Sarah thought about that word, about what it meant. Not blood, but choice. Not proximity, but presence. The road warriors had chosen her, had seen her kindness toward one of their own, and had responded with overwhelming generosity. They'd shown her what community could look like when people cared about each other, when they chose to see and help rather than ignore and pass by. The next morning was Sunday, and Sarah had the day off. She made pancakes for breakfast, and she and Emma ate them at their small kitchen table, maple syrup dripping down their chins, both of them laughing. After breakfast, they walked to the playground behind the apartment complex, and Sarah pushed Emma on the swings while other kids played nearby. It was normal and beautiful and everything Sarah had wanted for so long. That afternoon, Tom Morrison stopped by. He was riding his motorcycle, which sounded much better than it had the first time she'd seen it. "Ray's buddy at the garage looked at my bike," he explained. "Fixed it up proper. Wouldn't take any money." "That's how they are," Sarah said. "That's how you are," Tom corrected. "You started all this with 1 cup of coffee." "It wasn't the coffee. It was just seeing someone who needed help and having something to give." Tom nodded slowly. "I've been homeless," he said. "After I got back from Iraq, I couldn't hold down a job. PTSD was bad, nightmares worse. I lived in my car for a year, then on the street for 6 months. The road warriors found me at a gas station, saw my Ranger tab, took me in, gave me a place to stay, got me into the VA, helped me get stable. I've been trying to pay that forward ever since. How'd you end up with only $3 the other day? Bad week. Benefits didn't come through on time, spent everything I had on medication. Was planning to ride to the VA and sort it out, just needed some coffee first to get warm. Tom smiled, and then there you were, an angel in a diner uniform. I'm not an angel. Near enough. Tom reached into his jacket and pulled out a small wooden carving, a motorcycle with incredible detail. Made this for you. Been working on it all week. Figured you should have something to remember all this by. Sarah took the carving, running her fingers over the smooth wood. It's beautiful. Thank you. You're welcome. Tom paused. Ray told me about the apartment, about the car, all of it. I'm glad. You deserve better than that trailer. So do you. So does everyone. Yeah, but we can't save everyone. We just do what we can when we can. That's enough. After Tom left, Sarah put the wooden motorcycle on the bookshelf in the living room, where she could see it every day. A reminder of where she'd been and how far she'd come. A reminder that kindness was never wasted, that giving created abundance, that the smallest acts could change everything. The weeks that followed settled into a new rhythm. Sarah worked her shifts at the diner, but with Jerry's raise and better tips, money wasn't as suffocatingly tight. Emma thrived in their new apartment, made friends with the other kids in the complex, did well in school. Sarah's car ran smoothly after the garage's repairs. The food bank deliveries meant they always had enough to eat. And the road warriors checked in regularly, not intrusively, just a text here and there. You good? Need anything? Come to the cookout Saturday. Sarah went to the cookout. She brought Emma, who was initially shy around all the motorcycles and leather, but quickly warmed up when she realized these tough-looking bikers had brought face-painting supplies and were organizing relay races for the kids. Sarah stood with Maria and some of the other women, drinking lemonade and watching Emma play, feeling something she hadn't felt in years, belonging. Ray came over and stood beside her. You settling in okay? More than okay. It's everything. I don't know how to thank you enough. You already did. You gave Tom his dignity back when you paid for that coffee. That's worth more than money. Ray took a sip of his beer. We've been talking, the club. We want to do more of this. Help people who help others. Make it a regular thing. We're calling it the Coffee Fund. Sarah laughed. The Coffee Fund? Tom's idea. Seemed fitting. Ray smiled. We're setting up a nonprofit, going to raise money. Help people who are struggling but still finding ways to be kind. People like you. We want you to be part of it, if you're interested. Help us figure out who needs help, how to reach them. I'd be honored. Good. Because you understand it in a way most people don't. You've lived it. The Coffee Fund launched that winter, and Sarah became one of its first volunteers. She helped identify people in need, coordinated with local businesses and churches, made sure resources got to those who needed them most. The road warriors provided the muscle and the money, but Sarah provided the insight and the empathy, the understanding of what it meant to be struggling and invisible. They helped a single dad whose car had broken down, keeping him from getting to work. They paid medical bills for an elderly woman who'd run out of options. They provided Christmas gifts for families who couldn't afford them. Each act of kindness was documented, shared on social media, used to inspire others to give. And slowly, steadily, the Coffee Fund grew. By spring, they'd helped over 50 people. By summer, that number had doubled. Local news picked up the story, ran a feature on the motorcycle club that was changing lives one cup of coffee at a time. Sarah was interviewed, and she talked about her grandmother and Grace, and the morning she'd decided to help a stranger. She talked about how that decision had saved her life, had given her hope, had reminded her that the world was full of people who cared. The story went viral. Donations poured in from across the country. People shared their own stories of small kindnesses that had changed their lives. The Coffee Fund expanded to other cities, other chapters of motorcycle clubs taking up the cause. It became a movement, built on the simple idea that seeing someone and helping them mattered, that no act of kindness was ever too small. Through it all, Sarah kept working at the diner. She didn't need to anymore, not really. Between the raise and the opportunities that had come from the media attention, she could have done something else. But she stayed because she'd learned something important. The work wasn't beneath her. The people weren't forgettable. Every customer was someone's daughter or son or parent or friend. Everyone had a story. Everyone deserved to be seen. And so, she poured coffee and took orders and delivered plates, and she did it with the knowledge that this work mattered. That service mattered. That showing up and being present and caring about people was the most important work anyone could do. 1 year after that rainy morning when she'd paid for Tom's coffee, the Road Warriors threw a party at the American Legion Hall. Everyone was there. Tom and Ray and Maria, all the club members, the people they'd helped through the coffee fund, local business owners and community leaders. Emma ran around with the other kids, her face painted like a butterfly, her laughter ringing through the hall. Sarah stood near the back, watching it all, feeling overwhelmed with gratitude. Ray found her there and handed her a framed photograph. It showed the diner's parking lot full of motorcycles on that first morning, the day everything had changed. "Thought you should have this," Ray said. "Remember where it started?" Sarah looked at the photo, at the rows of bikes and the gathering of people who'd decided to care. "I'll never forget," she said. "How could I? You changed a lot of lives, Sarah, starting with your own. You all changed mine." "No," Ray said gently. "You gave us the opportunity to be better than we were. That's a gift. You gave yourself the same gift when you helped Tom. You chose kindness when it cost you something. That's when it matters most." Later that night, after the party had wound down and Emma was asleep in the car on the drive home, Sarah thought about that. Choosing kindness when it cost you something. That was the key, wasn't it? Anyone could be kind when it was easy, when they had plenty to spare. But being kind when you had nothing, when giving meant sacrifice, when helping someone else meant going without yourself, that was when kindness became transformation. She thought about her grandmother, about the lessons she'd taught through action rather than words. She thought about the water cycle Emma had learned in school: evaporation, condensation, precipitation. The same water, cycling through different forms, falling as rain and rising as mist and falling again. Maybe kindness was like that too. Given and received and given again. An endless cycle that sustained life. Sarah pulled into the parking lot of their apartment complex, this place that had become home. She carried Emma upstairs and tucked her into bed, then stood at the living room window, looking out at the night. Somewhere out there, someone was struggling. Someone was cold or hungry or scared or alone. Someone was doing the math in their head, counting change, trying to figure out how to survive another day. And somewhere out there, someone was choosing to help. Someone was seeing another person struggle and deciding to act. Someone was paying for a cup of coffee they couldn't afford, or letting someone use their phone, or giving directions with a smile, or simply acknowledging another human being's existence with respect and dignity. Small acts, small graces, they added up, they mattered, they changed the world one interaction at a time. Sarah picked up the wooden motorcycle from the shelf, the one Tom had carved for her. She traced its lines with her finger, feeling the care that had gone into its creation. Then she set it back down next to the framed photograph Ray had given her. Reminders of what was possible when people chose to see each other, to care for each other, to create the kind of world they wanted to live in. She made herself a cup of coffee, stood by the window, and watched the stars. The same stars that had watched over her grandmother, that had watched over her during the hardest times, that would watch over Emma as she grew up in this warm apartment, with its working heat and its mother, who'd learned that giving was receiving and that kindness was never wasted. Sarah raised her cup in a silent toast to her grandmother, to Tom Morrison, to Ray and the Road Warriors, to everyone who'd ever chosen compassion over indifference, generosity over greed, love over fear. To the people who saw other people and decided they mattered. And to coffee, that small grace that got you through the hard mornings and sometimes, if you were lucky, led you home. In the years that followed, Sarah Mitchell became known throughout Branson and beyond as the woman who'd started a movement with a $1.50 cup of coffee. The Coffee Fund grew into a national organization, helping thousands of people, inspiring countless acts of kindness. But Sarah never forgot where it started. In a diner on a rainy morning, with a tired vet and a struggling waitress, two people who saw each other's humanity and chose to honor it. She taught Emma those lessons, not through lectures but through example. She showed her daughter what it meant to give when it cost you something, to see people who were invisible to others, to believe that small acts could create large changes, and Emma learned, the way children do, by watching and absorbing and eventually living those values herself. The trailer with the broken heat was torn down eventually, replaced by new construction, but Sarah kept a photo of it on her wall, next to the wooden motorcycle and the framed picture of the parking lot full of bikes, reminders of the journey, of how far she'd come, of what was possible when people chose kindness over convenience. The diner still stood on Route 65, chrome sides gleaming in the sun. Sarah worked there for 5 more years before moving on to run the coffee fund full-time. But she never forgot those early morning shifts, never forgot the sound of the coffee maker, or the smell of bacon grease, or the weight of quarters in her apron pocket. Never forgot what it felt like to serve people, to see them, to honor their humanity with attention and care. And every so often, when someone came in who looked like they were doing that math, counting change, weighing options, trying to figure out what they could afford, Sarah made sure their coffee was on the house, just like someone had once done for her, just like she'd once done for Tom Morrison on a cold November morning when $1.50 had changed everything. The cycle continued, the kindness flowed. The world became a little bit better, one cup of coffee at a time, and Sarah Mitchell, who'd once been so close to giving up, stood at the center of it all and knew she was exactly where she was meant to be, doing exactly what she was meant to do. Giving, receiving, paying it forward, the same grace, cycling through different forms, falling like rain and rising like hope and falling again. Endless, essential, enough.